Good evening. I'd like to call to order our Plan and Zone meeting tonight. A couple notes. I appreciate everybody's attendance. Everybody here will get an opportunity to speak on either or both of the petitions after staff has made their presentation. I encourage anybody that has questions to step up to the podium one at a time and address the commission. Please identify yourself with your name and your address. Also, I do need to request that you turn off your cell phones because they could interfere with our recordings. With that being said, we will start. We've got 2 public hearing agenda items, and we will start with roll call, please. Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Schneider?
Present.
Lammers?
Present.
Johnson?
Present.
Tallman present. Ingram?
Present.
Hepner?
Here.
Ransgard and Reinhardt are excused. Manus?
Here.
Garrington is also excused. Stelk? Here. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. First item is case ORD 21-02 is a request of the City of Davenport to amend various sections of Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code of Davenport, Iowa, entitled Zoning. Laura?
Thank you. Before I start, I wanted to explain these are kind of 2 components together, so for pieces of it. So first we're going to go over text changes, and then the rezoning will be next. So they kind of go together at the same time, but I will first be highlighting specifically text changes. So the purpose of some of these text changes are to address some city council goals to position the city's center for revitalization and redevelopment. It's been a goal for many years. One of those tools is through zoning. So we were directed by city council and administration to kind of do a review what would be the best in order to position the city for the type of redevelopment we want to see within this area. In addition, there are some other minimal text changes in our efforts to continue to fine-tune the overall zoning code. So the overall goal for the new zoning district that we are proposing as a city is to position the central part of the city for revitalization oriented towards a regional mix of commercial, high-density residential and entertainment that encourages compatible development and redevelopment while promoting local reinvestment. So that's the purpose statement we are proposing for this new zoning district. We're still reviewing dimensional standards, which for those of you that aren't aware what dimensional standards are, it's setbacks and lot sizes. But what my intention is for this is we're introducing some uses that are more traditional, like a single family, semi-detached, or commonly known as duplexes, and 2-family. We want to make sure that we have a mechanism to preserve a traditional lot configuration for those while also encouraging greater density within the commercial uses within that district. So I think that we will be loosening setback requirements and height restrictions for the commercial components for that. Also within this section 1705, which is the commercial section of the zoning code, staff has had many conversations with people looking to either add on to buildings or do additional buildings on C1 lots. Currently, there is a 0 to 15 build to zone, which means you need to start building either right at your lot line or within the first 15 feet of your lot line. Now, that does work and is appropriate in certain sections that are zone C1, like the Hilltop, where you don't have a lot of buildings that are set back. This is an example off of Hickory Grove Road that is set back 120 feet. So we want to be able to provide some flexibility to people in that area to be able to develop buildings that are in line with existing buildings. Now back to the city center design standards. We are proposing that they are pretty much comparable to what is already in place in the C3 zoning, which is what the rezoning component is currently zoned C3 general commercial. So this is, chart is in our zoning code. It covers various factors related to transparency requirements and some variety in what you're looking at for blank walls and to provide some interest to the structures. So we are proposing not really changing anything within those design standards throughout the whole thing. Really, the only thing that we would propose adding is in multi-building complexes, that there's a distinct visual link between various buildings, not just within the landscaping elements. And that is something that's a requirement in our commercial office park, and I think it would work well with what we're trying to achieve with this city-centered zoning district. So the use matrix. So this is a table, for those of you who do not know, of all of the uses in our zoning code and all of the zoning districts. So highlighted in orange there, it would be what is the new city center. So we would represent it as C-C. So I can kind of go over this. It's a long table, so bear with me. And at the same time, I'll go over some of the other zoning text changes that are happening. So on this screen, the major change that you are seeing is that we would propose not permitting billboards within the city center zoning district. That is the only change from and also no children home, and no broadcasting facilities, TV or radio. So that's the changes within the city center that's different from its current zoning. Then on the left side, you see some yellow. In our zoning code, bed and breakfasts were permitted by right in R1 and R2, but required special use permits in R3, R4, and RMF. But I don't know why that would be the case. So I propose switching them to a special use permit so that we have some higher level of review if those come to be. Now related to changes for city center, we are proposing not allowing drug alcohol treatment facilities, residential, that would be live-in drug alcohol treatment facilities, domestic violence shelters, or accessory dwelling units, that one wasn't permitted before. Sorry, I got off the line. Domestic violence shelters in the city center, that's what's different. And special use permit for drive-through facilities, that's largely to review it in the location within the district to make sure it makes sense. It's not something that we'd want adjacent to residential particularly. It would be something that we'd want closer to the larger intersection there. The only other change that's not related to the city center zoning district is we are proposing to allow daycare centers as a special use in I-1. The reasoning behind that is we are seeing our industrial areas with higher levels of employment. We want to have the ability to allow daycare closer to those working establishments. We wouldn't permit it by right because there are some uses within that I-1 district that we don't want a daycare center nearby. So we just want to have that as a possible option. All right, for city center, we are proposing making any dwelling type use, so that would be multifamily townhouse, single family semi-detached, which again are duplexes, and two family, all special uses. That is largely locational, that we want to review where within the zoning district those would be going and make sure that they're appropriate. We are also proposing removing food pantries and funeral home as options in the city center, converting gas stations to a special use. Again, it's locational. I skipped the financial institution alternative. We're completely removing that. Those are like same day paycheck places and pawn shops. And then, make sure I didn't miss any. Then the food bank in I-2 helps address nonconformities. So right now, the Riverbend Food Pantry is in an I-2 zoning district, so this would relieve it from being a legal nonconforming use. For the city center, the changes would be greenhouse nursery retail would not be permitted. No halfway house by special use anymore. Heavy retail would be removed. Homeless shelter would be removed, and industrial design would be removed. For city center, the changes on this one are none. They are all the same. For regular text changes, we propose having parking lots as a special use in I-2. I think it may have ended up being a typo, but it's a significant change. The residential care facility was listed as a special use in C1 while it's permitted in all of our other commercial districts. So we are proposing changing that to permitted. And then on this page for city center, we're proposing having retail alcohol sales as a special use. Again, that gives a higher level of oversight on where it goes, and it gives us an opportunity to add on additional conditions as necessary. And then we would remove enclosed self-storage and self-storage outdoor as possibilities for this district. And then in addition to that, also social service centers have also been removed. In addition to that changes for city center, we propose making self-storage enclosed a special use in C3 and removing it from commercial office park. And then removing outdoor self-storage from C3. Largely, staff feels that self-storage is an industrial type use. It's warehousing on a smaller scale. We would like to see that more in industrial uses and not in our commercial properties. So that's the reasoning behind it. C3, enclosed, you could do it as long as we have some higher level of control and review on it with the ability to re-review as necessary. All right, on this one, the changes are some removal of vehicle dealership enclosed, vehicle dealership outdoor, vehicle rental enclosed, vehicle rental outdoor, and vehicle repairs. And then there are no changes to temporary uses proposed within the city center. Some additional zoning changes. This one came up as a hardship variance request. We had a small, we call it, it's like a doggy daycare place that came to us. And they wanted to have up to an 8-foot tall fence. Our use standards only permit up to a 7-foot tall fence. They were in a zoning district that by right, they were permitted to have an 8-foot fence if they were not doing an animal care facility. So we are tweaking the code section here to allow up to an 8-foot tall fence, which is the highest fence you can have in any of our zoning districts, just to allow that flexibility. For car washes, we have received some complaints from residential areas in the past related to the noise of vacuum stations. So we propose in the principal use standards for car washes, removing them from being adjacent to residential districts. So if there is a car wash on a property, it would be far and few between that this would be something that happens, but we want to have the ability to prohibit the vacuum stations from being on the side of the lot that is adjacent to a residential district. And then this next one kind of comes into play if it happens to be on a corner near some residential. The exiting traffic should not exit into adjacent neighborhoods. So it's just to ensure and protect existing residential neighborhoods from experiencing some of the noises and commercial uses associated with car washes. For dwelling multifamily, so this is your typical apartment complexes. The code's been kind of silent on any of the ancillary type uses and buildings associated with multifamily. So this includes garage buildings or clubhouses or pool houses type uses. So what we propose is we have some wording that we'll propose at the October meeting. It hasn't been finalized, but it would basically maintain compatibility with the principal structure so that it looks like it belongs there, and then provides guidance on setback requirements depending on the type of structure. So garage buildings would follow the setback requirements for typical garages in residential districts, but a pool house or a clubhouse would have to meet the normal setbacks for that district. So we also have 2 temporary use standard changes. So this is related, sorry, I missed it. I have a small typo, but it just provides additional clarity in the explanation of temporary uses, that in addition to meeting any use standards associated with temporary uses in the zoning code, there is also regulations and permitting processes required in the overall Davenport Municipal Code that need to be followed as well. And then adding the professional fireworks displays into the definition of temporary outdoor entertainment. This ensures that it's clearly displayed that you need to have a special event permit for professional fireworks displays. Exterior lighting. So in layman's terms, cutoff luminaires are light poles on private property. The cutoff part is that it's not open at the top, so it's directional lighting down. So we are proposing that for cutoff luminaires, that they not be increased in height to 40 feet. Currently, across the board, no matter what district you're in, the limit is 25 feet. Now, while that is appropriate in lower intensity commercial and residential areas, I find it a little bit burdensome and has created a lot of nonconformities in industrial districts and some commercial districts. So I propose maximum of 40 feet for industrial districts and 35 feet in some of the commercial districts. In particular, I don't think we would include the commercial transitional or the C1 in that. We're still having some internal discussions on what would be the most appropriate. And then for non-conforming site elements, there is a section. So non-conforming things are things that were legally done previously. And there's some trigger points on when they need to come into conformance with the code. This subsection in particular is related to parking lot landscaping. We have had a lot of businesses that would like to resurface their parking lot, their asphalt parking lot. Currently, the language in our code says any kind of resurfacing triggers the parking lot landscaping, which could be is a significant investment and impact on our local businesses. And I think the unintended consequence is that businesses will just decide not to fix their parking lots. So we would like to differentiate between milling a few inches off of a parking lot so that they can invest in their community and make their parking lots better versus a full removal down to subbase. And at that level, we would have them comply with the landscaping. Public input. We did publish in the Quad City Times notice of the public hearing, and we will keep you apprised for comments specifically to the zoning text change. I will note that I've had several conversations with businesses within this that are impacted by the potential city center rezoning, as well as some of the adjacent properties. So I will kind of go over that in more detail when we get to the rezoning case. And then we will provide a formal recommendation and more fleshed out text changes for you at the October 5th Plan and Zone Commission meeting. That's all I got.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioners, do you have any questions at this time? Commissioner Hefner, and before you start, Tom, I want to let everybody know we're having some technical difficulties from Commissioner Hefner and Commissioner Schneider, so their mics are not working tonight. I will ask them to speak a little louder, but please understand that we can't fix it just yet. Thank you. Commissioner Hefner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Belser Ventures 3 property that we rezoned, outdoor storage,
Right.
with this change, would that have been not gone through based on where it was and what it is?
Yes, it would be, it will now be considered legal nonconforming. It's in the process of being approved right now, and so that will be allowed to be installed and it would be considered legal nonconforming.
Future, if there was something like that, that would not have gone through.
Correct. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Hefner. Commissioner Lammers.
On the section on dimensional standards, it states, and I know they're still being evaluated, but it says the goal is to allow greater density and eliminate height restrictions in the proposed district. Can you give me an example of
Sure.
an area in Davenport where that exists already so I can envision it? 'Cause right
Sure.
now,
Our downtown does not have height restrictions. I think that's, right now, it's the only zoning district that does not. Currently, the C3 has a 45-foot height restriction. We obviously, with the Northwest Bank building, that is a legal non-conforming building. So in some ways, if the rezoning for city center is successful, that would become a legal conforming building. If we stick with not having height restrictions. The industrial mixed use has up to 90 foot. And both of our industrial districts have 90 foot, and then the multifamily has 75 foot height max.
and would, if it's successful and you have this change, is there a way to monitor that tall buildings and their relation to neighborhoods that surround it?
That's one of the
That they
things
just
that we're
aren't
talking about, yeah.
Arbitrarily placed to?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we are discussing on how to limit the height near adjacent residential. They do already have an existing and well-established buffer on the back of the property that the city has no intentions of removing. And I'll go over that in a little bit more detail, but that would be something that we are still evaluating on how that would impact the area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lammers. Any additional questions at this time? Seeing none, would anybody in the audience care to ask any questions or make any comments? Final call.
There's one coming.
Thank you. I have some questions
Can
regarding,
you please identify yourself
Oh, I'm
and give
sorry.
your address?
I live at 231 Westerfield Road, and my name is Rose Karen. The streets Harrison, Main, and Sheridan right now are dead ends. Do you plan to open those up as through streets going into this area?
We do not. We do not anticipate that happening, and we're still in discussions on how it would be written, but it would be a condition of the rezoning to prohibit the connection of those streets through to the mall area, and then we would want to preserve the existing buffer as well.
Okay. And with this rezoning, what does that mean for our property values and our possible future taxes?
Well, that is not some known information. However, the district is overall more restrictive on what types of uses are allowed in it. So I do not think it would have a negative impact on property values.
And on taxes?
Well, taxes, I would have to ask the city assessor. I don't have information on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Seeing none, commissioners, any additional questions? Final call? Commissioner Hefner.
Mr. Chair. I just applaud the idea on the overlay. I think that's good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hefner. Any additional questions? Seeing none, we will close case number ORD 21-02. It will be back before us in October 5th.
Yes, October 5th.
We will move on to our second and final case is REZ 21-04, is a request of the city of Davenport to rezone 143 acres, more or less, of property located near 320 West Kimberly Road, generally being bounded by Northwest Boulevard, Kimberly Road, Brady Street, East 42nd Street, Welcome Way, and by the north lot line of North Park Mall, changing the zoning from C3 General Commercial to CC City Center District to facilitate revitalization oriented toward regional mixed use and tourism for the central part of the city. Laura?
Thank you. Good job. That was a mouthful.
Thank you.
So this is a map of the proposed rezoning area. It is all currently C3. I know that we've had a couple questions as to why we didn't extend it between Welcome Way and Brady up all the way to 46th Street. Largely that's C2 right now, and so we didn't really want to touch that. We did some analysis. The uses in there are fully built out and have been reinvested in fairly recently. And so we've wanted to try to scale it down a little bit. So that is why between 46th and 42nd, it is not included in this requested rezoning. We also did not include the CT properties on Ripley or on 46th Street to help with transition into those residential neighborhoods. Also, that would have been a pretty significant increase in usability within those. So as I stated in the previous public hearing, the goal of this is to position the area to ensure we are seeing the type of revitalization and redevelopment in the central part of the city along some major state highways, and then position the city to be eligible potentially to apply for reinvestment district funds from the state or other potential programs, either at the state level or at the federal level, to help reinvest in this area. So this is one of the tools that's being looked at in that process. So the uses that we went over in the last public hearing are largely uses, what is being allowed in this are higher density that draw other people so that there's some reciprocal uses happening. So if you go to one, you would likely then go somewhere else and do something else. So we're hoping to activate the area and having a more engaged area. Some of the uses that have been proposed to be removed are ones that do not generate a lot of sales tax revenue, which is what the reinvestment district incentive is all about, is sales tax. And they also are ones that have a lot of area requirements for them, so like the dealership related ones. On the left is the Davenport 2030 future land use map from our comprehensive plan, and that is regional commercial. So we did feel that the proposed zoning district is appropriate within that area. And then on the right is the existing zoning map. So you have the kind of maroon orange is C3, and then the truer red is the C2. So we tried at north of Kimberly to stick with just the C3 area. So we did publish a public notice in the Quad City Times and sent a letter to adjacent property owners within 200 feet. We also sent a letter to all of the property owners within the zoning district. Staff has received one email with concerns related to the rezoning and how it would impact crime, property values, taxes, things along those lines. We will reach out to them and discuss that with them in more detail, and see if there's something specific that they're concerned about. Staff has also had multiple meetings and phone calls with some of the businesses within the area to discuss the rezoning with them. And I think that we hopefully have addressed the large majority of their concerns. We've at least explained it, and they're digesting it and reviewing it. So staff is compiling technical review committee comments, and we will have recommendations provided at the Plan and Zoning Commission meeting on October 5th. As I stated, one of those would probably be it would be preservation of the existing buffer along the residential, and then prohibition of connecting the streets through to the mall. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioners, any questions at this point? Seeing none, I will open it up, excuse me, to our audience. If you have any concerns, thoughts, compliments? I see none at this point. Commissioners? Final call for the audience. Seeing none, final call for the commissioners. Seeing none, that will close case number REZ 21-04. It too will be back before us on October 5th. We will now move on to our regular meeting agenda. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Schneider. Lammers.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Tallman here. Ingram.
Present.
Hepner. Here. Ransgard and Reinhardt's are excused. Manus.
Here.
Garrington's excused. Stelk. Here. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. City Council activity.
So at the most recent city council meeting, there were 4 plats that were approved. That would have been Birchwood South, First Edition, Birchwood Grove, North Welcome Way, Second Edition. Those were all final plats. And then the preliminary plat for the Russell Fry Armstrong Industrial Park.
Thank you, Laura. Secretary's report. Secretary's report's been moved and seconded. All in favor as printed signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, same signature. Hearing none, it will stay as presented. Comp plan, anything new, Laura?
Nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. We currently have no old or new business in either zoning or subdivision activity. Anything future, Laura?
No, nothing in the future other than the 2 items before us today.
Thank you. Communications, anybody either in the audience or commission wish to speak?
Question, I sent an email.
Yep, I got it today.
Oh, you got it?
Yep.
Okay, so because I had a call.
Yep, I'll give you a call tomorrow.
And then I got a letter where the number was CASTREZ 20-06.
Oh, it's a
That's what
typo.
it says.
Okay.
And here, however, the number was different.
Yep,
Is that just a error?
that's a typo, that's an error. Yep,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any additional business, Laura? Anything you want to speak of? Commissioners, any questions, thoughts?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor of adjournment signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? We are officially adjourned. Thanks again for your attendance. I appreciate your time. Please drive safely.